Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe and share. Help build my channel and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. What if I told you that one of the most pivotal moments in Christian history has been almost completely forgotten? A moment so dramatic that it scattered Christ's closest followers to the winds, setting in motion events that would ultimately transform a small Judean movement into a world religion. Today we're going to explore the extraordinary story of the Great Exodus of 36 AD, a mass exile that occurred just 4 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. It's a tale of persecution, mysterious journeys, and unlikely heroes. And at its center stands a wealthy and powerful Roman official who risked everything to save the early followers of the Way. After Jesus' crucifixion, resurrection and ascension, his followers might have hoped for a period of peace to gather their thoughts and begin their ministry. Instead, what awaited them was a storm of unprecedented violence. The Sanhedrin, the Jewish religious authority in Jerusalem, responded to Christ's disappearance with malicious intent. Secret meetings were held, plots were hatched, and a systematic persecution was deliberately planned. The goal was nothing less than the complete extermination of Christ's followers. This wasn't just religious disagreement, this was what historians have called a blind, cruel, unreasonable, black hatred that surpassed even the bitterness of previous religious conflicts in Jewish history. The irony was painful, most victims were of the same race as their persecutors, creating what one scholar described as a divided house within Judaism itself. To execute their plans, the Sanhedrin formed a specialized enforcement group, essentially a first-century Gestapo, and appointed a leader named Saul to head their operations. The methodology was swift and vicious, targeting all followers regardless of ethnic background, Greek, Roman, or Jew. Public and secret executions became commonplace, with mass imprisonment of believers and no mercy shown to victims. In the year 33 AD, the violence claimed its first major victim. Stephen, a leader of what was called the Liberal Party and a defender of Jesus at the Sanhedrin trial, had become Saul's inveterate foe. Working alongside apostles like Peter and John, Stephen had defied the Sadducees through his preaching and had been remarkably successful. His execution was carried out according to Jewish tradition, death by stoning at the gate that now bears his name. Present at this execution was Saul himself, watching as the first Christian martyr fell. But Stephen's death only intensified Saul's campaign. The persecution grew, fierce and vindictive, creating havoc within the Jerusalem church. More troublingly, it began to expand geographically beyond Judean boundaries, illegally trespassing into Roman territory. Yet the Roman administration showed no interest in censuring Saul or interfering with his work. From their perspective, his efforts were beneficial. Christianity was viewed as an undesirable religious pestilence that was best eliminated. In this darkest hour, an unlikely hero emerged, Joseph of Arimathea. Described in historical accounts as a stalwart, fearless protector, Joseph used his position as an influential Roman official to defend disciples and women, standing between believers and their enemies. What made Joseph particularly effective was his wealth and resources. He owned ships that he deployed for evacuation, working in coordination with what some called the Christian underworld. This infuriated Saul, who found himself unable to directly move against Joseph or those under his protection. But the overwhelming scale of persecution meant that even Joseph's considerable resources could only protect so many. By 36 AD, just 4 years after Christ's death, the situation had become untenable. What followed was what scholars have termed an epochal exile, documented in Acts chapter 8 verses 1-4, when the Jerusalem church was forcibly scattered. Joseph's ships carried many believers to safety, but a darkly descended curtain fell on the lives of key figures in early Christianity. This is where one of history's great mysteries begins: what became of the lost disciples? While the journeys of some apostles like Peter, Paul, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are relatively well documented, the fates of many others, including most of the original 12, the 71st elected by Christ, and the later 120, vanish into historical silence after 36 AD. Even major figures like Joseph of Arimathea and Mary, the mother of Jesus, disappear from the scriptural record, leaving no traces of the mysterious passage into permanent exile. The timeline of early Christianity's collapse in Judea is shockingly brief. Christ's ministry lasted 3 years. The exile of his core followers came just 4 years after his death. Some disciples continued to labor in Judea, but their efforts had transitory effects. Roman control tightened over both Jews and Christians, and within 35 years, in 70 AD, Jerusalem itself would be destroyed. What happened to Joseph of Arimathea and his companions? According to Cardinal Baronius, described as the most outstanding historian of the Roman Catholic Church and curator of the Vatican Library, Joseph's group was exposed to the sea in a vessel without sails or oars, drifting to Marseille in what was considered a miraculous salvation. From there, they journeyed to Britain, where they preached the gospel until their deaths. This account is supported by many reliable Greek and Roman authorities, affirmed in the Jewish Encyclopedia under Al, and testified to in Vatican archives. As one historian put it, the Salian Gestapo had failed dismally and for the last time. This marked the beginning of the persecution's collapse. The Romans, initially shocked at the ferocious atrocities of the Sanhedrin but passive in their enablement, eventually shifted policy and became rabid persecutors and executioners themselves, targeting both Jews and Christians. This created a two-edged sword of persecution. Imperial edicts against Christianity followed, with Tiberius making it a capital offense, followed by similar proclamations from Claudius and other emperors. Christianity was seen as a menace to their empiric safety, and Christians became categorized as a class of people to be exterminated. This culminated in the catastrophe of 70 AD, when Roman forces under Titus, son of Emperor Vespasian, executed masses of Jews, put Jerusalem to torch, and leveled it to ashes, fulfilling Jesus' prophecy. The Jewish people were scattered to the four corners of the world, living in ghettos and permanent exile from Judea. Meanwhile, Saul experienced his famous conversion on the road to Damascus, where he was stricken blind, heard the voice of Christ, had his sight restored, and completely converted to the faith of the Way. This news stunned and infuriated the Sanhedrin, who ordered an all-out drive to capture him with instructions to kill him on sight. The hunter had become the hunted. After initially hiding and appealing to Christ's disciples, who were understandably reluctant and suspicious, Saul escaped by being lowered over the city wall by rope, accompanied by those who eventually accepted his transformation. He would go on to become Paul, taking up his Great Commission with wholehearted dedication until his eventual martyrdom, leaving a legacy as Saint Paul, the Apostle to the Gentiles. This brings us to one of history's great paradoxes. Christ had predicted that glory would be taken from the Jews and given to another, and spoke of his mission to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Christianity was born in the Holy Land but grew and flourished elsewhere. The Romans remained the greatest enemies of the Christian gospel for over 300 years after the death of Christ, yet eventually Rome itself was Christianized. For those who view the gospel as mystical, intangible or incredible, founded on myth and superstition, or having no substance to his existence, Tracing the Lost Disciples provides solid evidence of the historical reality of early Christianity. The passage of these figures from biblical to secular history, especially Joseph of Arimathea, has been confirmed by many learned minds from Christ's era onward, with consistent historical records across sources. Cardinal Baronius holds special credibility in this matter. His ecclesiastical background, access to Vatican archives, and lack of motivation to falsify British Christian priority, which would have been counter to Vatican interests if untrue, lend weight to his accounts. So there you have it, the extraordinary story of the Great Exodus of 36 AD. A moment when persecution intended to extinguish a fledgling faith instead scattered its seeds across the Roman world. It's a reminder that history often works in unexpected ways. The very forces that sought to destroy Christianity ended up ensuring its survival and spread. And at the center of it all stands Joseph of Arimathea, the man who gave Jesus his tomb, and then risked everything to save his followers. The next time you hear about the spread of early Christianity, remember this forgotten exodus, the dramatic flight from Jerusalem that changed the course of religious history forever. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. If you would like to help support my channel and time, hit the super thanks heart icon on the bottom of the video and contribute. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.